It started with a shimmer in the sky over the Indian Ocean, not a flash or a bang, but a ripple, like light bending through water. Satellites blinked. Signals stuttered. Something large was entering Earth's atmosphere, silent as shadow. Most humans never saw it. Those who did were mostly asleep. But a few, insomniac astronomers, paranoid preppers, and one stoned surfer named Dave, knew something was up. Dave tried to warn people. "They're coming," he told the news cameras, shirtless and damp, holding a burrito in one hand and a cracked surfboard in the other. "Big jellyfish spaceship." It blinked at me. Like, emotionally. Dude, it felt personal. No one listened. Except a few online conspiracy groups who immediately made Dave the Prophet memes. Dave took it in stride. The ship settled in low orbit, a matte black ovoid the size of Manhattan. It made no demands. It made no noise. It just hovered, as if contemplating something. For 3 days, the world waited. Military jets scrambled. Superpowers flexed. One nation attempted a missile strike, and the missile simply vanished, swallowed by a translucent ripple in the sky. That's when people started panicking. Not because they feared invasion. But because the aliens hadn't done anything. No speeches. No laser beams. Just the constant, nagging waiting. When the ship finally responded, it wasn't with threats or gunfire, it was with music. Not just any music. Barry Manilow. From every phone, every radio, every Wi-Fi-enabled coffee maker came the unmistakable crooning of Copacabana. Then, silence. Then again, but louder. Someone screamed. Another began dancing. 100 million confused humans sang, her name was Lola, in a trance of shared auditory torment. Then came the message, translated through hijacked smart TVs and one very confused golden retriever with a Bluetooth collar. "We are the Drexlorians. Prepare for subjugation. Please stand by." They landed 3 ships, one on each continent, North America, Eurasia, and Australia. They meant to land in Africa but missed the turn somewhere around Venus. The ships unfolded like origami in reverse, becoming jagged structures of silver and bone-white plating. From each, emerged the Drexlorian vanguard. Tall. Pale. Slender. They looked vaguely like an art student's rendering of angels gone through an HR-approved redesign. For eyes, no mouths, and spindly fingers that moved like puppet strings. They brought machines that twisted metal like clay and drones shaped like screaming eggs. And they made one crucial mistake. They landed in Cleveland. To be fair, they meant to land in Washington, D.C., but interstellar GPS is unreliable, especially after 500 light-years. Instead of the White House, they descended into a Dunkin' parking lot. The first Drexlorian out of the ship was immediately struck by a jeep driven by a woman named Dolores who was late for her Zumba class. She never stopped. The Drexlorian Supreme Herald, Zarin, tried to initiate global conquest protocols, only to discover that Earth's atmosphere contained trace particulates of peanut oil. He was allergic. Swelled up like a marshmallow and had to be dragged back inside the ship by confused subordinates. Then came the resistance. Not from governments or armies, those were still arguing over whose fault it was. No, the first real pushback came from a YouTube survivalist influencer known as Tactical Gary 69, who managed to steal and disassemble one of the Drexlorian drones using only a screwdriver, 3 raccoons, and a vat of expired Mountain Dew. His tutorial, titled "Aliens Hate This One Simple Trick," went viral in 7 minutes. By morning, half of Oklahoma had turned their lawnmowers into EMP grenades. The Drexlorians were baffled. Earth's military responses were sporadic, ineffective, but the civilians, they were inventive. Improvised weapons. Decentralized resistance. Humor as psychological warfare. One alien unit was driven to madness after being forced to listen to 96 hours of TikTok parodies of their invasion speech, auto-tuned and remixed into reggaeton. They tried launching their terror machines, massive biomechanical towers designed to subdue entire cities with psychic waves. One activated in downtown Tokyo. It was immediately mistaken for a new augmented reality promotion for a mech anime and overrun by enthusiastic cosplayers. The psychic wave was accidentally synchronized with karaoke bars. Instead of fear, it inspired a citywide flash mob. The tower collapsed after a group of office workers climbed it to take selfies with what they thought was a sculpture. Meanwhile, underground, a small coalition of humanity's finest minds, rogues, and weirdos formed, the Committee for Unexpected Tactical Engagement, or CUTE. Their leader? A retired Canadian kindergarten teacher named Elspeth McConnell, who'd survived a bear attack in 1987 by yelling the alphabet backwards and pelting it with oatmeal cookies. "If I can stop a grizzly with baked goods and vowels," she declared, "I can sure as hell stop some interstellar disco ghosts." Their first operation involved infiltrating a Drexlorian command node using a hot dog cart and several large balloons. It worked. And this was only the beginning. The mission was codenamed Operation Cinnamon Bun, not because it had anything to do with pastries, but because Tactical Gary 69 was hungry when they started planning and had trouble spelling subversion. No one had the heart to change it. The plan? Hijack one of the alien surveillance drones and fly it, filled with glitter, into the Drexlorian command node in San Antonio. Why San Antonio? That's where the Drexlorians had set up a psychic amplifier in an abandoned IKEA. They were using it to pacify the local population with weird dreams involving geometry and loud whispers. The dreams weren't effective, but they were annoying, and that was enough to get Elspeth's attention. So the hot dog cart was repurposed. It now bristled with antennas, slingshots, and one suspiciously reprogrammed karaoke machine. The raccoons were given tactical vests stitched from old jeans and trained using peanut butter and interpretive dance. Gary insisted they were essential. No one questioned it. Night fell over suburban Texas like a warm, sarcastic blanket. The IKEA's lights flickered oddly, not from power fluctuations, but because the Drexlorians had misunderstood human interior design and replaced all the bulbs with ambient bioluminescent sacks that smelled faintly of regret. The hot dog cart approached. It beeped once. Loudly. Elspeth, dressed in cargo shorts and a "World's Okayest Teacher" hoodie, crouched behind a dumpster. Her comm crackled. "Gary," she whispered, "why did the cart beep?" Gary's voice came through, distorted and distracted. "Might have been the karaoke mode kicking in." "What mode?" "Dance battle mode. I didn't turn it off." "Sorry." Before Elspeth could respond, the cart emitted a blaring bass drop and launched into a Swedish pop remix of "Hit Me Baby One More Time." The lights flickered blue. A small disco ball extended from the chassis. The raccoons began spinning. The Drexlorian guards, tall, angular, with vaguely fish-like heads, emerged from the IKEA's meatball entrance, weapons raised, confusion etched into their four blinking eyes. One stepped forward. Another started nodding involuntarily to the beat. Then came the glitter. A compressed canister launched from the cart, showering the aliens in sparkling chaos. Their cloaking fields malfunctioned immediately, flashing random colors like confused chameleons at a rave. One alien froze mid-stride, unsure if it was under attack or being invited to prom. That was the moment Elspeth charged. At 64, she no longer had cartilage in one knee and one of her hips clicked ominously when she ran. But adrenaline, principle, and pure Canadian politeness fueled her as she tackled the nearest alien into a display of discount bath towels. "Aisle 16, she shouted to her team. "Go!" Gary followed, hoisting a flamethrower made from a modified leaf blower and barbecue lighter. "Eat thermodynamics, weirdos," he bellowed, accidentally setting fire to a display of decorative pillows. Inside, things devolved fast. Echoes of yodeled pop music bounced off the oddly shaped walls. Tactical raccoons created distractions by unzipping every alien satchel and scattering mysterious orbs that turned out to be psychic projectors. The resulting chaos had half the alien garrison believing they were trapped inside their own memories of high school gym class. Elspeth made it to the amplifier, a grotesque piece of technology that looked like a cross between a satellite dish and a seasick octopus. She didn't know how it worked. But she did know how to unplug things. She yanked the largest glowing cable. The amplifier gave a sound that could only be described as offended, then exploded into a shower of sparks and kale-scented fog. All across San Antonio, people sat up in bed at once, eyes wide. Someone whispered, "Why do I suddenly understand trigonometry?" In orbit, aboard the main Drexlorian ship, Commander Trawl stood frozen before a tactical display. His aides blinked rapidly. "They've weaponized glitter," one muttered. "They turned our amplifier into a noise machine," another added. "And raccoons. Commander. Tactical raccoons." Commander Trawl's expression didn't change. Drexlorians had no mouths, so it never did, but his eyelids twitched. "Initiate Protocol 13, he said quietly. "But sir, that's—" "I know what it is. Do it. These humans don't fight wars. They prank them." Back on Earth, Operation Cinnamon Bun was a bizarre success. The amplifier was offline. The IKEA, while slightly scorched, had been reclaimed by locals and converted into a free concert venue. Gary's raccoons had started an Instagram account. Elspeth sat on the edge of a fountain, ice pack on her knee, sipping warm Gatorade. "That went better than expected," she muttered. Gary nodded beside her, face glitter-streaked and proud. "Told you the raccoons would work." "Yeah," Elspeth said. "I'm starting to think we might actually win this thing." Commander Trawl stood motionless in the center of the Drexlorian flagship's command sphere, surrounded by a rotating lattice of holographic projections. He watched as footage replayed again and again, a raccoon in a denim vest unplugging a psychic relay while glitter rained from a spinning food cart and earthlings danced. "Are they celebrating?" one of the analysts asked, his 4 eyes blinking out of sync. Trawl didn't answer. He hadn't spoken in nearly 20 minutes. His gills fluttered slowly, the Drexlorian equivalent of heavy breathing. "These creatures," he finally said, voice distorted and mechanical, "have no pattern. No hierarchy. No discipline." The analysts nodded. "They are," he paused, searching for a word, "erratic." "Sir," a young officer spoke up. "Do we retreat?" Trawl's eyes burned with determination. "No. We do not run from chaos. We study it. We isolate the anomaly. And we counter it." He turned toward the chamber's edge. "Activate the emissary." Gasps echoed through the ranks. Lights dimmed. Deep below the ship, something ancient stirred. On Earth, Elspeth McConnell was trying to make banana bread. The Resistance had relocated to a decommissioned roller rink just outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, the only place with enough room for tactical raccoon drills, drone storage, and a functioning popcorn machine. She'd finally convinced Gary to take a nap, and the raccoons were occupied testing escape routes from locked lockers. It was the quietest moment in 2 weeks. Then her phone rang. It was a burner, one of the ones with a duct-taped antenna and the number written on it in permanent marker. "McConnell," she said. A familiar voice crackled through the static. "It's Dahlia. NORAD just picked up something dropping out of orbit." "Drexlorian?" "No heat signature. No comms. Just gravity. Like it's falling on purpose. Straight into Death Valley." Elspeth frowned. "They're not bombing?" "Nope. This is different. Like they're delivering something. I hate when they get creative," Elspeth muttered, already pulling on her hoodie. The object hit at dawn. Deserts are usually quiet in the morning. Winds roll over cracked stone, and the sun paints the sand in gold and fire. But that morning, the wind stopped. A perfect sphere, black and smooth as obsidian, half embedded itself into the desert floor. It didn't crack or shake the earth. It arrived, like it was always supposed to be there. By the time Elspeth's team arrived, a truck caravan of ex-park rangers, a retired opera singer with drone expertise, and 2 engineers who mostly argued about snacks, a ring of sand had begun to form around the sphere, like static rippling out from a speaker. "Gary," Elspeth said, stepping out, "please tell me you didn't pack more glitter bombs." "Only the small ones," he said defensively, holding a duffel bag labeled Micro Chaos Kit. The sphere opened with no warning. It didn't crack. It didn't split. It simply was open. Inside stood a figure, not Drexlorian, not human. Something in between. It was tall, impossibly so, but its form shifted like smoke, sometimes solid, sometimes glimmering like heat above asphalt. It wore no armor, no insignia. Its face was blank, save for 2 vertical slits that pulsed with soft yellow light. The humans raised weapons. The raccoons hissed and took cover behind a tumbleweed. The figure raised one arm, palm open. "I am the emissary," it said, not with a voice, but with a sound that bypassed ears and nestled uncomfortably behind the eyes. "I am here to understand." "Understand what?" Elspeth asked. The emissary paused. "Your world. Your logic. Your survival. We have known many species. Conquered most. Negotiated with others. But you," it tilted its head, "you bake cakes during war." "That was banana bread," Elspeth muttered. "You weaponize wildlife. You dismantle drones using chewing gum and sarcasm. Your tactics defy all known models." "Thanks," Gary said. "We try." The emissary's form shifted. For a moment, it seemed amused. "I am not here to destroy. I am here to adapt. The Drexlorians have studied you. But they cannot become what they do not feel. I can." It took a step forward. The desert sand didn't shift under its feet. "I request immersion." Elspeth crossed her arms. "You want to join us? I want to become one of you. Learn your thoughts. Feel your chaos. Understand your survival." Gary leaned over to Elspeth. "Do we tell him about breakfast tacos or let that be a surprise?" And so, with the rising sun burning across the desert, the Resistance welcomed the galaxy's first defector emissary. They gave it a name, Frank, because no one could pronounce its Drexlorian title without getting a nosebleed, and a flannel shirt. They didn't know what would come of it. But they were sure of one thing. If the aliens wanted to understand humanity, they were in for the weirdest crash course in the galaxy. The red in the sky wasn't fire, or laser, or even light. It was signal. Every satellite, every frequency, every open Wi-Fi router, even garage door remotes, all suddenly synchronized into a humming, harmonic pulse that made dogs bark and babies laugh. A red pulse, visible and audible, blanketed the globe. And with it came clowns. Not literal clowns. At least, not yet. But across the world, highly coordinated teams of bizarre Drexlorian constructs began appearing, not in warships, but in unexpected ways. A vending machine in Nebraska began dispensing sentient cans that sang in baritone and exploded when hugged. Public restrooms across Scandinavia reported towel dispensers giving out long scrolls of alien poetry in binary. In downtown Tokyo, a mirrored elevator opened, and 12 Drexlorian agents in matching business suits walked out in perfect sync, then began loudly debating whether pizza qualified as soup. Operation Mirrorfold had begun. Chaos for chaos? Elspeth muttered, watching the satellite feed. Frank stood beside her, his form unusually stable. They think we'll short-circuit, he said quietly. That mimicking our unpredictability will overwhelm us. That if they create confusion without structure, your civilization will collapse into feedback. Gary entered, holding a tactical umbrella and a half-dismantled Alexa speaker. Too late. That's already Tuesday. Elspeth nodded slowly. They're not just invading. They're mocking. Rodriguez switched on the big screen. News reports flickered in. A choir of drones floating through New York, singing Gregorian chants with perfect human voices. A synchronized dance number performed by 33 robotic squirrels in Berlin. A strange pop-up store in Paris selling hats that emitted confusing odors and whispering sounds that made people forget their passwords. Frank stepped forward. They've weaponized absurdity. They think it's your greatest weakness. No, Elspeth said, a smile forming. It's our fuel. The resistance adapted fast. Too fast, according to Drexlorian analysts. The exploding singing cans became a viral trend on TikTok. People began hosting Drexel parties, where guests brought malfunctioning alien devices and tried to use them as fondue pots. In Oklahoma, Gary organized a counterstrike dubbed Operation Knock Knock. The mission: infiltrate a Drexlorian humor lab in Wyoming and replace all the alien joke algorithms with classic dad joke databases from 1990s sitcoms. The result: confusion, cultural distortion, and one Drexlorian technician crying in a parking lot muttering, "Why does the chicken cross all roads?" Frank, meanwhile, changed. He stopped hovering. He began walking. He wore socks with sandals. He insisted on grilling. He played kazoo at inappropriate times and was working on a stand-up routine about toaster ownership. Elspeth watched him with a mixture of pride and mild dread. Is he going native? Someone whispered. No, she said. He's becoming us. But Commander Troll was not finished. He paced his silent command bridge, watching Earth with growing frustration. They laugh, he muttered. They dance. They adapt. One of his aides approached. Sir, the emissary. Frank, he's completely assimilated. He's begun delivering motivational speeches using PowerPoint. Troll froze. His voice dropped to a dangerous hush. Activate final fold. The aides gasped. One dropped his data rod. You mean? Yes, Troll said, eyes glinting. The humanoid cultural singularity. If they survive this, then they are not prey. They are contenders. An hour later, across every device, every screen, every smartwatch and smart fridge on Earth, one broadcast appeared. It was Troll. Wearing sunglasses. Holding a coffee cup labeled #OneGalacticBoss. He smiled. Humans of Earth, he said, in perfectly inflected sarcasm. Let's podcast. The screen went dark. In the Resistance roller rink, the silence was broken only by the soft buzz of an overhead fluorescent light that had, for reasons unknown, begun humming the melody of Take On Me. Elspeth stood, arms crossed. Did he just threaten us with a podcast? I mean, Gary said, adjusting his tinfoil headphones, technically, yes. And also, somehow worse. Rodriguez blinked at the monitor. Did that coffee cup say #OneGalacticBoss? It did, Frank confirmed, flickering slightly. And he's wearing human sunglasses. Indoors. The symbolic subtext is troubling. He's trying to outhuman us, Elspeth muttered. Gary narrowed his eyes. Then we hit him where it hurts. In the content. Within 6 hours, the Resistance launched the People's Cast, Earth's Last Laugh. It wasn't polished. The microphones were repurposed karaoke mics, the editing software was held together by duct tape and enthusiastic interns, and the theme music was a 12-second ukulele loop that couldn't be turned off. But it was real. Every episode featured something human, jokes that didn't land, cooking tips from a conspiracy theorist, Elspeth's now famous "What's in My Pocket" segment, and live raccoon commentary, mostly squeaks and an occasional distant crash. Frank co-hosted under the pseudonym F-Dog. "I still do not understand the phrase spilling the tea," he said in episode 4. "That's okay," Elspeth replied. "Neither do most humans. Just say it confidently. Then. I am here to spill all the sauces." By episode 6, they had 500,000 downloads. By episode 9, alien outposts began reporting a dangerous phenomenon, cross-species laughter. The Drexlorian war councils were baffled. Soldiers stopped syncing properly. Their ultra-organized operations began to unravel under the strain of rogue humor and spontaneous memes. One elite unit abandoned a battle entirely after discovering the concept of dad jokes. Another refused orders until the command AI could explain whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Meanwhile, Troll's podcast, The Galactic Vision, was faltering. He had everything: professional-grade voice modulation, sleek intro graphics, even a guest from the Tharn Collective who specialized in strategic confusion algorithms. But nobody was listening. Today, Troll said in episode 5, we analyze the psychological implications of asymmetrical entertainment. In response, Earth listeners launched a parody show titled Troll Talk, The Wrong Way to Do Right, hosted by 2 teenagers in Illinois who used a voice filter that made everything sound like underwater chipmunks. It outperformed Troll's original within 2 days. On board the Drexlorian command ship, chaos crept in like water through cracked glass. "Sir," an aide whispered, "Frank has just been voted the number 2 most relatable podcast personality in Quadrant 3Z. What's number 1? A Shiba Inu with a soundboard." Troll's eyes dimmed. "Initiate total broadcast silence. If we can't win the airwaves, we'll take away the air." The next morning, all Earth communication tech went dead. No internet. No radio. No podcasts. Just silence, thick, absolute, and foreign. Frank shuddered. It is anti-expression. They've triggered a broadcast vacuum. They call it the quiet. Rodriguez slammed a metal box onto the table. "Then we go analog." He flipped it open to reveal an ancient cassette recorder and a stack of mixtapes labeled Road Trip, Mustard ERA. Gary's eyes widened. "We're going full retro." Elspeth nodded. "If they want silence, we give them noise. Frank, get the raccoons. We're going live." 2 hours later, a battered RV covered in foil and painted with racing flames barreled across Nevada. On the roof, a rack of speakers blared static-laced Earth music. Elvis, Queen, Weird Al, accordion solos, all blended into a rolling wave of joyful chaos. Frank stood atop the RV, wielding a kazoo and a windbreaker that said vibrations don't lie. From every roadside gas station to deep space Drexlorian outposts, Earth's analog assault echoed. Troll watched from orbit, lips tightening. "They've weaponized nostalgia." "Sir," said a trembling aide, "one of our lieutenants has joined a garage band." "This ends now," Troll growled. "Prepare the overcast. We're erasing their entire cultural memory. If they can't remember joy, they can't fight." Back on Earth, the resistance prepped for the final push. In the RV's cramped interior, Frank looked out the window as the horizon glowed red. "They're afraid," he said softly. "Yeah?" Elspeth muttered, tightening a bolt on the homemade antenna. "Because for the first time in 1,000 cycles," Frank continued, "they're losing control. And they're losing it, to music. Laughter. Spontaneity." Gary held up a boombox. "Then let's turn up the volume." They reached the signal crater at dusk. A perfect ring of scorched earth, its center held the remains of Earth's first alien contact, a crater carved not by weapons, but by a question: what happens when the illogical becomes the only strategy left? Elspeth stepped out of the RV and breathed in the sharp, electric air. Wind tugged at her sleeves. Above, the clouds pulsed red, a sign the overcast had already begun. "This is it," she said. "This is where we say, not today, you over-designed jellyfish." Gary emerged with a bundle of tangled cassette wire and a helmet made of colanders. "Got the magnetic pulse driver set. It's duct taped to 3 microwaves and a prayer." Frank stepped out last. He had stabilized his form, less translucent now, more solid. Almost human. His Hawaiian shirt fluttered gently in the wind. Around his neck, Goblin Steve perched like a fuzzy general. "They're afraid," Frank said softly. "This place is a psychic amplifier. Their last gambit. If they erase your cultural memory, they think you'll surrender." Elspeth raised an eyebrow. "And will we?" Frank looked around. At the jerry-rigged RV, the crackling speakers, the resistance fighters trying to untangle headphone cords with grim determination. "No," he said. "You'll just make new ones." The overcast hit at 2000 hours. A wave of silence blanketed the sky, like the stars had been muted. Across the globe, radios died. TVs flickered. Memories began to stutter. Digital history blurred. In New York, a man forgot his mother's recipe for stew. In Nairobi, a child blinked and no longer remembered why they loved red. In Tokyo, an old woman looked at a painting she'd made as a girl and whispered, "Who are you?" It was working. Until the kazoo played. Just one note, off-key, defiant, impossibly stupid, tore through the silence like a needle through fabric. It echoed through the crater. It hit the clouds. And then came the music. Gary flipped all the switches. The speakers screamed to life, ancient and crackling, as Earth's mixtape roared across the sky. Cassettes spun. Walkmans lit up. Vinyl scratched out imperfect melodies. And humans began to remember. A child in Spain laughed and started humming again. A poet in Mumbai recited their first love poem from memory. An old woman in Tokyo smiled and said, "I'm the girl who painted this." And above, the red clouds shattered. Trawl stared from his command deck. "How?" His second-in-command's voice shook. "They used analog resonance. Pre-digital emotion anchors. They grounded memory. They're not fighting us," Trawl hissed. "They're dancing around us." In the crater, Frank stepped into the beam of the overcast's core. It shimmered like liquid geometry, trying to unmake him, rewrite his thoughts, strip his borrowed humanity. He didn't resist. He invited it in. His memories, karaoke nights, bad card games, ukulele jingles, Goblin Steve's snack thefts, collided with the Drexlorian data storm. The system choked. Frank turned his voice into signal. He spoke in every language, not words, but vibes. Laughter. Chaos. Resilience. Humans are not noise, he transmitted. They are the song. Trawl screamed as his ship's systems began to sync to the beat of Earth's broadcast. Monitors glitched. Crew members started tapping feet involuntarily. "They've infected our rhythm. They've dropped the bass," whispered a panicked officer. "Full retreat," Trawl ordered. "Now." But it was too late. In orbit, thousands of Drexlorian drones powered down, not broken, just done. Overwhelmed. Their pattern sensors fried by saxophone solos and the smell of microwave popcorn. Frank stepped out of the beam, his body flickering with static and melody. "It's over," Elspeth said. "No," Frank replied, smiling softly. "It's beginning." The morning after the overcast fell was strangely peaceful. No sirens, no alerts. Just the rustling of wind through scorched sagebrush and the soft whir of cassette reels still spinning. Birds sang. Somewhere nearby, someone was already grilling hot dogs. Frank sat cross-legged in the dust, Hawaiian shirt fluttering, eyes closed. Around him, the beam was gone, the sky was clear, and his form had stabilized, not entirely human, not entirely alien, but something new. His silhouette flickered with faint echoes of signal, a barely audible kazoo solo looping quietly, like a memory of rebellion. Elspeth approached, carrying 2 mugs of black coffee and a slight limp. She handed one over. "You going to turn into a glowing cloud again today?" Frank sipped and smiled. "Probably not. I believe I've reached equilibrium." "You look like you lost a cosmic wrestling match with a retro radio station." "I did. And I would do it again." In the distance, Gary and Rodriguez were wiring the RV into what they were calling Earth's first intergalactic FM repeater station. The raccoons had taken over a small tool shed and were somehow broadcasting pirate comedy sketches in 4 languages. Goblin Steve now wore a tiny headset and refused to speak unless mic'd. "So," Elspeth said, sitting beside Frank in the dust, "what happens now? Do your people surrender? Sign a treaty? Run screaming into a black hole?" "They've withdrawn," Frank said. "Not in defeat. In confusion. In awe, perhaps. You've shown them a kind of power they can't map or weaponize. Joy. Chaos. Improvisation." Elspeth chuckled. "You mean the stuff we usually get yelled at for in school?" "Precisely." From orbit, the Drexlorian fleet hung silent. No weapons charged. No signals broadcast. Ships turned like slow fish, their once glorious symmetry disrupted by irregular twitching and reports of spontaneous laughter among mid-tier officers. Troll had locked himself in the thought chamber and refused to come out until someone erased the memory of the kazoo from fleet databanks. On Earth, something began to shift. The resistance wasn't disbanded, it evolved. Not into an army, but a network of creative cells. Improv groups, analog radio clubs, public art battalions, open mic militias. They didn't carry guns. They carried punchlines and glue sticks and mixtapes. Instead of bunkers, they had converted bowling alleys and laundromats filled with CRT TVs playing looped episodes of Earth's weirdest cultural moments. And Frank? Frank became something else entirely. Not a leader. Not a hero. A catalyst. A living reminder that absurdity could be armor, that laughter could be strategy, and that sometimes, to survive, you have to play a kazoo at the end of the world. He traveled. Not as a warrior or a prophet, but as a guest. He was invited to festivals, to family dinners, to late-night taco trucks. He listened. He learned. And everywhere he went, he asked one simple question: what makes you feel real? And Earth answered. With music. With awkward first dates. With glitter that still hadn't fully washed off the desert floor. With one old woman's banana bread recipe restored, now considered sacred and classified under interstellar culinary law. Humanity hadn't won through dominance. It had won through selfhood. Through the unapologetic, unfiltered, utterly nonsensical essence of being. And the galaxy, for the first time in millennia, stopped trying to conquer and started trying to understand. Earth became a myth. Not of strength or science. But of style. In the deepest corners of space, Drexlorian initiates whisper of the day the sky cracked open and laughter became a weapon. Somewhere on a remote colony, a soldier hums "Livin' on a Prayer" and doesn't know why it makes him feel invincible. In a quiet office on Mars, a child writes a comic book about a glowing alien who learned to play Uno and save the world. And in the ruins of Signal Crater, on the anniversary of the day silence died, a small group gathers. No uniforms. No titles. Just humans. And one being with a Hawaiian shirt and a harmonica this time. They don't give speeches. They play music. And somewhere, far above, Trawl sighs in his lonely command pod, hearing the faint echo of a kazoo on the wind. He still doesn't understand it. But it haunts him. And that, in its own way, is the greatest victory Earth ever had. The end. If you like this sci-fi story, subscribe to the channel to not miss new stories.